Now then, shall we move on to the topic that I initially wanted to discuss with you, or was there anything else you wanted to ask of me? There was in fact something else, Kate asked. What I want to know most of all is what you're planning to do about the prisoners in the Ceridium Towers after defeating the Overseer. Naturally, we will free them, the King of the Underground says. We will first need to do something about the guard station in front of the towers, obviously, but as soon... what? Obviously, but as soon as... Okay. You will free all of them, Kate asked in a doubtful tone, even the ones that are essential for keeping the devices all around the Allender functional. Once again, the King of the Underground and Albert exchange a look, but this time it is Albert who responds. We will prioritize the rescue of prisoners that are family members here in the Underground, Albert says. After those are all safe, we will see how many other people we'll be able to save without compromising the delicate infrastructure of the city. So what you're saying is that you're going to abandon all the innocent people that you don't personally know or care about, Kate says. Nobody said we are abandoning them, the King of the Underground says. We will at some point rescue them too, of course, but it will take time. This may be difficult for an outsider to understand, but many of the citizens of Allender are highly dependent on the use of their devices. For example, there are a lot of people in the city who would normally need to walk for hours to get from their homes to their workplace. But with the use of flying metal vehicles that you probably have seen roaming the city before the lockdown, they can get there in half an hour or less. If these metal vehicles were to suddenly stop functioning, many people would be out of job, and they will eventually run out of money to buy food for their families. Would you like to take responsibility for ruining all those people's livelihoods just to make yourself feel better for saving a few extra prisoners? Those few extra prisoners have been living in hell for who knows how many months, Kate says angrily. Don't you dare compare the situation to some lazy good-for-nothing that couldn't even be bothered to walk a few more hours to work so that they could feed their own family. I can clearly see that this situation is affecting you on a personal level, the King of the Underground says after seeing the fury in Kate's eyes. And I will admit that I may have oversimplified the precarious situation in which the prisoners are currently finding themselves. However, I also think that your personal bias is causing you to make some unfair comparisons of your own. Maybe the example I used wasn't the most inspiring one, but surely you can see how the sudden malfunction of the primary means of transportation in a city would cause its infrastructure to collapse on itself, wouldn't you? That even people who make a living by transporting goods from one end of the city to the other by using these metal vehicles, for God's sakes, could even imagine how the people of Allender would react if every device in the city would stop working and thousands of people who would suddenly be out of their jobs. As soon as a new king were to take the throne, there would be riots of such magnitude that it would start a whole civil war. So that's the real reason why you don't want to save those prisoners, Kate says in a disgusting tone. It's because it would ruin your chance of holding on to your precious throne. After hearing what Kate had to say, the King of the Underground closes his eyes and shakes his head in disapproval for a second or two. It is clear that we are not making any progress with this conversation, the King of the Underground says. Believe what you want. Either way, I think we've already gotten the answer you were looking for. Now perhaps it's finally time for us to have a little discussion about the Overseer and the hold that he currently has over the city. Maybe we should, yes, Darren says. And let us get right to it, the King of the Underground says. First of all, I'd like to get you all up to speed with a few recent developments that have happened on the surface since we've returned from your trip to the Ceridium Tower. According to our scouts, the Overseer have been very busy these past few hours. One of the first things he did after the king's death was apparently to begin assassinating every single high-ranked person in the city who knew about the existence of his cores. Darren, I think you should already be familiar with what the Overseer core is from Peter. Have you told your friends about it? Yes, Darren says, they know of it. What was the core? I think the core was in a specific location in the city, like one specific location instead of multiple, as far as I can remember. Good, the King of the Underground says. Then you should also know that we will be organizing an attack on this core of his tomorrow as soon as we have gathered all the necessary troops. Is it safe to assume that you will join us on this mission? Yes, we have already agreed that we'll be going with you tomorrow, Darren says. Very well, the King says. We will give you the exact details of this mission later. Once we'll know for sure who we can count on to fight alongside us, as hopes us is that the Overseer is not aware of my knowledge about his core's whereabouts, because otherwise we will likely to encounter heavy resistance on our way to our target. He does know, however, there is not much we can do other than to power through his defenses, hopes for the best, because we will already be bringing our best men on this mission, so it will it will be all for nothing. One more thing to note is that the overseers, for some reason, still maintaining the citywide lockdown from before. So we should expect to be attacked by flying metal balls as soon as we reach the surface, so don't take any hostile actions towards them. Understood, Darren says. Oh, and the other thing, the King of the Underground says, you should be careful to not talk about our plans to eliminate the Overseer when you are close to any of the blue crystals. It may be hard to believe, but Albert told me while we were in the throne room that he could feel someone watching us through the crystals. When I asked him to give me more details, he said he couldn't because it was more of an instinct than anything else, that he couldn't feel any foreign auras coming from the crystals by using his magical sense. Since I have come to trust Albert's assassin instincts throughout the years, my conclusion was that the most likely culprit would be Overseer, because to my knowledge his metal balls also have blue crystals within them, so he must have somehow found a way to resonate with the crystals in the cave. They might also explain why the crystals have suddenly started behaving so erratically all of a sudden, although this strange behavior could also have been caused by the recent explosion that affected them. You're right about the Overseer. We detected him through one of the crystals earlier. That's good to know. We'll be more careful around these crystals. Why would we give out information? So that's good to know. We'll try to be more careful around these crystals from now on. Alright, the King of the Underground says, well, that's all for now. As promised, we will give you more details about tomorrow's operation when the time comes. Most likely the briefing will be held tomorrow in the morning. Until then, feel free to roam around the underground base and to use its facilities however you want, just like before. We'll do that, and says, see you around then. The King of the Underground nods, and then we follow Darren outside of the waiting room, heading into one of the tunnels that is less populated, that has no blue crystal left in its walls or ceilings. Once we are far enough away from waiting room to make sure that nobody can hear us, Hardrick is the first one to address a question to us. So did anyone else find it surprising that the King of the Underground didn't really pose much resistance to Darren's nominating Layla's father as a king candidate? Hardrick says. I thought he'd be more, hostile about it. It's clear that he was expecting Dr. Isaac to refuse the offer from the very beginning, Kate says. He would not have been so enthusiastic about Darren's suggestion otherwise. Yeah, but even so, Hardrick says, the recording that we heard earlier made it seem like the King of the Underground wouldn't even consider any other options than himself, that would be willing to straight up kill us if we were to suggest something different. You'd have thought that he'd at least try to make an argument, then he'd be a better pick before Darren gives me a suggestion. I don't know, that seems a little fishy to me. Do you think the recording might have been fake after all? Oh, like an AI recording? That is kind of funny considering it's coming from the Overseer, who is an AI himself. Maybe we should ask the King of the Underground about it, and then Melindra, Araka, Layla could read his aura to see if he's lying. From what Layla told me, it is possible to circumvent lie detection while lying through omission, Kate says. If that is true, then reading the King of the Underground's aura to see if he's telling the truth or not could be one of the worst possible ideas, because he could speak in half-truths and almost never lie up front. It would be very easy for him to give us a correct, carefully constructed answer that is technically true, absolves him of guilt, even if he is hiding something important that we don't know about. Yeah, reading the guy's true intention is a pain, Araka says. I wouldn't recommend it. I've checked his aura a few times, and he seems to have made a habit of adding a little tremble to it almost every time when he speaks about an easily verifiable truth in order to throw off my potential aura readings. Throw off any potential aura readers like myself. It makes it seem like he's lying all the time, even when it's obvious he's telling the truth. It gets too annoying when you try to differentiate between the actual lies and fake lies, considering how good he is at aura manipulation. Maybe I could figure it out if I were to try hard enough, but I'm not going to waste my time for something as stupid as this. Even if it were possible to find out his true intentions, Darren says, it would still be a bad idea to tell the king about our discussion with the Overseer, because that would almost guarantee our exclusion from tomorrow's mission. With how suspicious the King of the Underground usually tends to get over the smallest things, I really don't see how he could trust us in any way after hearing that we are having secret conversation with the Overseer in his own underground base. I don't think he can obtain any more information from either the King of the Underground or the Overseer, so we'll just have to think long and hard and decide whose side we'll take by the end of the day. Either way, we should probably... Hey, wait a minute, I completely forgot to check, but Albert wouldn't by any chance have been following us invisibly this whole time, would he? Relax, Araka says. If he were following you, I would have told you about it. Right, Darren says, looking somewhat unconvinced. Anyway, what I was going to say is that we should probably all take some time to cool our heads. We'll reach a decision together later in the evening. Let's split up and continue our individual trainings or whatever. We'll meet up in front of our sleeping quarters in a few hours. I'll call you through the transistor when it's time to assemble.